Okay, I want to start with something strange and completely true here today. You've never actually heard your own voice. Really. The voice you hear inside your own head doesn't reach you the same way everyone else hears it. You see, when you hear your own voice, some of that sound travels through the bones in your skull, and that changes it. It adds warmth, depth, and it makes your voice sound richer to you than it does traveling through the air to everybody else. Now, that's why the first time somebody hears a recording of themselves, they almost always do the same thing. They wince and they're thinking, is that really me? Yeah, that's you. It's just the version of you everybody else has been hearing all along. Now, think about how strange that is. You use your voice every day of your life, in every conversation, every meeting, and every argument. In every moment where you've tried to explain yourself, lead someone, comfort someone, persuade someone, connect with someone. In all those moments, you use your voice. And yet you've never actually heard it the way they do. In a very real sense, most of us are strangers to our own voice. And maybe that explains something else. Why we assume the voice we have is simply the voice we got. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, some people got lucky. Some people were born with one of those voices. And the rest of us, well, we think this is just my voice, nothing I can do about it. And that idea is wrong. And I want to show you why. Because there are three things about your voice that you've probably never been taught. The first one changes what you believe is possible. The second changes how you understand the thing itself. And the third changes why any of this matters right now at all. So the first one, nobody's a natural. Now, I know that sounds like I'm trying to make everybody feel good, but I'm not. I mean it literally. The speaker who owns the room, the singer who gives you chills, and the person at work who can say something completely ordinary and everybody somehow turns toward them and leans in. You hear them and think, must be nice to be born with such a voice. But what you're hearing is rarely a born with it kind of thing. No, almost every time what you're hearing is a voice that got built. You just weren't there for the building. And listen, that voice, the building starts incredibly early. You see, this is one of my favorite little things I've ever learned about the human voice. Newborn babies can cry with characteristics of the language they heard before they were born. Think about that. No words yet, days old, and the voice is already being shaped by the world around it. Yeah, and there's proof of this. Researchers studied French and German newborns, and in 2009, they shared what they found. French newborns tended toward rising cries, while German newborns tended toward falling ones. Days old, they're not speaking French, they're not speaking German, they're crying. And yet already some of that melody of the language that surrounded them before birth is showing up in the sounds they make. So think about you and your own voice. Your voice has been developing since before you could even speak. Or it's been sitting still now that you're grown, stuck in whatever your environmental circumstances happen to be. I want to tell you from my own personal experience, no external studies, just from my own life, that I also know how buildable a voice really is because I had to rebuild mine. You see, there was a season of my life when I lost my voice. Not because I got sick, but because of grief. I'm not going to sit in that part of the story today because that isn't what this talks about. What matters is what happened after I had lost my voice. And what was that? I started rebuilding it on purpose. I went back to the mechanics, breath, the filters, the underlying identity, everything. And through that journey, I put my voice back together like an instrument being restrung. And over time, I watched something remarkable happen. My voice came back. Not randomly, not because one morning I woke up and suddenly felt better. It came back because I was doing specific things that changed the instrument. And that experience completely changed the way I think about voice and even led to the work I do today, helping others find and build their own voice. Because once you've watched a voice rebuild, especially for me, once you experience it, it becomes very hard to believe that voices are fixed. So when we call somebody a natural, most of the time what we really mean is, I didn't see the reps. That's it. You don't have to become somebody else. You don't need somebody else's voice. You just need to open yourself up and build the voice that's already inside of you. Now, here's where all this gets even more interesting. You're walking around with an incredibly sophisticated instrument, your voice, and almost nobody ever taught you how it works. And when you think about that, it's kind of a relief, isn't it? Because it's not even your fault that your voice isn't working like it's supposed to. You just never got the training. Anyways, I was talking recently with a leader at a large consulting firm. Super sharp guy, senior guy, people depend on him. And he gave me one of the better descriptions I've ever heard of what it feels like to use an untrained voice. He said it like this. When I drive a car, I'm managing all these things: brake, accelerator, steering, hand-eye coordination, and I know what I'm doing. Then he said, but with my voice, I'm basically in cruise control mode. And I love that because that's how most people speak, in cruise control mode. The voice comes out, so we assume we know how to use it. And then he said something else even more important. He said he knows there's all these other things available to him in his body and in his brain, but he doesn't know how to access them. And when he tries, his words, not mine, his words were that when he tries, he humiliates himself and he feels his credibility crumbling in the room. Now, those are big words: self-humiliation, crumbling credibility. But I knew exactly what he meant, and I bet a lot of people who are listening to this do as well. You try to sound stronger, but it feels fake. You try to add energy, yet it just feels forced. You try to sound more authoritative, and instead, now you're thinking all about yourself instead of your audience, which makes everything worse. So you go back to cruise control. Not because something's wrong with you, but because nobody ever gave you the manual. Nobody ever trained you how to use your voice. And you see, that's a very different problem than if your voice was just a born with it kind of thing. And because of this, you can wrap your head around the notion that your voice is a solvable problem. Whatever you might think about your voice, whatever you don't like, it's solvable. How? Well, at the simplest level, your voice starts with air. The breath is a source of the energy. Using that air, your vocal folds then create the vibrations. And then beyond the vocal cords, everything that happens through your vocal tract shapes that vibration into the sound that people finally hear. And that's your instrument in a nutshell. The one you've been carrying around your whole life without ever training it. Imagine being handed a priceless violin at birth and never once being told it could be tuned. That's what most people are doing with their voice. Most people never spent even 10 minutes learning how to use it. And that's wild. It's wild when you think about it. We'll spend hours learning a software tool. We'll watch tutorials on a new phone. We'll learn how every feature in a car works. But the instrument we carry into every room, nothing. No training. So I want you to try something later today. Not here if you don't want to, but do it in the car where, say, nobody can hear you. Just hum. Just with your lips closed. Easy, don't push, don't perform. And just notice where you feel the vibration. Most people will feel it back here. Then try it again, and this time, imagine bringing that vibration forward, toward the lips and the front of the face. Same basic effort, same person, same voice, but you probably feel the sound change. The vibration changes location. It feels different, more forward, more open. And that one tiny little experiment matters because it proves something. You changed your voice. You didn't change your personality. You didn't become more confident. You didn't repeat an affirmation. You just learned one small thing about how the instrument works, and the instrument responded. That's training. And once you understand that you can train your voice, you stop asking, do I have a good voice? And you start asking a much better question. How well have I learned to use the one I have? And can I change that by getting the right training? And all this brings me to what I think is now becoming one of the most important parts of this whole conversation. AI can clone a voice. It can mimic tone. It can reproduce sound. It can make something that sounds remarkably human. So you could look at all that and think, well, why bother training my voice? But I think the opposite's what you should be thinking. Because the more synthetic communication fills the world, the more valuable real human communication becomes. And we're already seeing it. When every image can be generated, a real photograph means something different. When every email can be generated, the sentence that actually sounds like the real person stands out. And when polished synthetic voices become the standard, a real human voice, present in the room, carrying real experience and experienced emotion, becomes increasingly important. AI can reproduce the sound, but it isn't standing there. You are. It didn't have the thought. You did. It doesn't care about the person sitting across from you, but you do. And when something matters to you, and you know how to use your voice reveals it. That's one of the things I've come to believe very deeply. Your voice tells the truth. It tells people whether you're nervous, whether you care, whether you believe what you're saying, whether you're connected to the thought or just repeating words. And a machine can imitate the acoustic result of that, but it can never duplicate the human experience infused into what creates those words. That always will belong to you. You're the creative force. You're the spark behind all communication. Which means this isn't a moment in time to abandon the human voice. Instead, it's probably the most important time in human history to develop it. Because the world's about to have no shortage of technically perfect sound. Which means what may become rare is somebody who means what they're saying and can express that in such a way that other humans feel it. It's deep, isn't it? So here's what I want to leave you with. First, nobody's a natural, which means you're not disqualified because you didn't somehow come out of the womb sounding like a keynote speaker. Second, your voice is trainable. You've got an instrument that most people have spent their whole lives using without ever learning how it works. And now's the time to train it. And third, in a world filling up with synthetic communication, your real human voice isn't becoming less important. It's becoming more important. So learn to infuse it with the prosody that connects with the hearts of your listeners. So if you remember one thing from me today, remember this. Your voice isn't something you're stuck with. It's something that's yours that you can build. And you don't build it so you can sound like somebody else. You build it so more of you can finally come through. And that's the whole point. Now, two easy things before I let you go. If you were sitting here during any part of this thinking, wow, I wonder what my own voice could actually do, reach out to me. I genuinely love talking about this stuff, and we can have a real conversation. You can find me at prvocalcoaching.com. And if somebody came into your mind while I was talking, somebody who keeps telling themselves, I'm just not a natural, send this to them. Maybe they need to hear that they were never supposed to be a natural either. They were supposed to learn how to use their voice, just like the rest of us. Bottom line, your voice is built, not born, and whatever's still sitting inside yours, we can teach you how to use it. So reach out to find out how. Okay, that's it for today. Bye for now.